Our guest today is Dr. Mohamed Elhoseiny. Dr. Mohamed is actually a thought leader in computer vision, and I'm really grateful to be able to meet with him today and share some of his learnings and journey in research over the past at least 10 years in this field. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Walid. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to interact with your audience.
Thanks. So let me just get started by kind of like walking the audience through some of the background that you've been, your journey, I guess, in research so far. So you did your PhD in Rutgers University from 2011 to 2016. And then from 2016 to 2019, you went to FAIR.
Mhm.
You worked on computer vision in FAIR, but also with language. So this is why this is relevant for our podcast, because your work is very much focused on multimodal, uh, learning multimodal models, including language, but not limited to. Um, and after that, you went to Stanford University. You were a visiting faculty for a while, a visiting faculty scholar for a while. Um, you also spent some time at Baidu, and you went to took on assistant professor role at KAUST University for the past 4 or 5 years. During this journey, you've done a lot of work that really established, like the multiple areas within multimodal. So I want to invite you to tell us, like within computer vision, what do you consider to be your focus?
Let me share with you how that my journey started. I have before even I started my PhD, I have been fortunate to mentor some bachelor students at in Shams University in Egypt, where I actually did start to know about computer vision. I didn't even have a class in computer vision. That could be surprising to some people. So, but I started to learn about computer vision through some bachelor projects that I was fortunate to mentor, and through that I started to learn about computer vision and get excited about this. And also in the meantime, I also learned about some language technologies. So I did a bit also of language work through this period. That was from 2007 to 2011. And then after that, I applied for a PhD. I started my PhD at Rutgers at 2011, where I started to think about how to merge these two branches. And I felt fortunate that I started to think about the problem that tries to marry these two domains together, and that happened to be the writer classifier problem that I wrote about in the blog post.
Awesome. This is actually a great starting point for the podcast. So maybe in just like a couple sentences, could you tell us why are you proud of this work?
It's mainly because it was the very first work that enables us to recognize an unseen species based on natural language description. So before that work, most of the prior state of the art was using like attributes, and attributes requires human labels of hundreds. These are human labels for and we have hundreds of them. Like for example, does this bird has a red wing or not? And every person have to label that attribute exists in the image or not for hundreds of images for every single species. On the other hand, this work started to study, hey, how about we would not require those human labels and use more natural interface, which is natural language. And this natural language will describe in a free form how this bird looked like, including those attributes. And then this makes the problem of recognizing these species less tedious from modeling perspective, and also in the meantime more natural.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I can only imagine like the number of hours that were saved for anybody who cares about a task like this. So maybe can you mention one task that people have kind of like built on top of this method to do something like in real life or in a practical application?
Imagine, for example, that if we have a system that can recognize species at the very large scale. There exist more than 8.6 million species on Earth, right? And we from behavior ecology practice and biodiversity practice, we care about understanding and recognizing those species and how they dynamically impacting our environment. The point here is that some of those species may go even extinct without even before we even discover them, because we lack the machinery to accelerate this species discovery machine. And if we have a system skilled enough to recognize millions of species and can understand what it has not seen, this machine can enable us in collaboration with human to accelerate the species discovery. To give you an example, our vice president of research, this like was likes fishing so much, and he one day he looked at the fish and it looks very different, and then he went to the director of Ritchie Center at Cows, tell him, hey, this species, this fish looks very different. You think this could be a new one? And then he started to investigate and look into this fish, and then at the end of the day, the center has confirmed that this is actually a new species, and it was named after his, I think, his mother or something like that. So
Oh,
the point is that this required him to go in person, and people look at these distinct attributes, and required actually knowledge from for years or something like that. Imagine that for marine animals, it's even more difficult to dive underwater. So imagine that you install these machines and it tells you, hey, this is a picture that could belong to a new species because it has a longer fin or something like that, and then experts will then confirm. So I
yes.
think this shows some promise that this technology can be useful somehow.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to kind of like fast forward to this year, 2024 now,
Mhm.
and you're writing a book. Could you tell us a little bit about the book you're writing? What is the name of the book, and why do you think this book needs to be written?
This book is called Imaginative AI. So, and the subtitle for that is Towards Human Level Imaginative Skills, Transforming Species Discovery, Content Creation, Self-Driving Car, and Emotional Health. So, the thing here, the one skill that human has distinctively and has been very like much less understood compared to other skills that we explored in AI, is imagination, because imagination is what help us discover new things, what help us explore what yet we want to learn. And this relates to problems like species discovery we just talked about, but it also extends to other problems. So in this book I cover different paths. One of this is imagine to see, imagine to create, imagine to drive, imagine to feel, all the type of skills where we aim for machines to explore or do skills that is beyond what it has seen its learning experiences.
Awesome. I'm really excited about this book, and I cannot wait to put my hands on it. If you want somebody to like read it before it's published, I can volunteer for that. But before this happens, I know the book is still in the in the making, and I don't know how long it's going to take. I know it can be a month or a year or 5 years, who knows. You probably don't know yet. Or actually, do you have a release date in mind?
I don't know how long will it take. I know that Fifi, for example, from Stanford, took 3.5 years to write her book. But I have a wish that I will try. I will wish for 2024 to maybe by the end of the year to have some version. But let's see how it goes. I'm not sure how long would it take. But I wish that to have the first release to be of quality that is good enough, and to maintain that bar. I think it's hard to predict how long would it take.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, the good thing is the quality of the work has already been established. Most of the work that you've been doing and that you will be discussing in the book is already published in the top tier journals and conferences in computer vision and AI. So the book has 4 parts to it: imagine to feel, imagine to drive, imagine to create, and imagine to see. And I think I mentioned it in the reverse order. But each of these is a skill that, like, as humans, some of us, not everybody, some of us like has developed in a very strong way. So feeling, there are some people who are emotionally intelligent and some people who are not. There is, like, in driving, some people are great drivers who go to Formula One races and stuff like that, and others cannot drive and, like, fumble on the driving wheel. The create, I think create is a bit kind of like under specified in my mind. Like, create what? All of these things can be creations, create art, create what? That's something that I would love to hear more about. Create to see, sorry, imagine to see is, I think, what the example that you provided before, the paper that you mentioned before, belongs to that category, right? Like, among other projects you worked on.
Yeah.
So I guess, can you elaborate a little bit about imagine to create? Because even I cannot understand what is this part about.
Word that is common between all this is the word imagine, right? So imagine to see is right now defined as the ability of the model to imagine beyond the species it has seen during training. Imagine to create is also defined by in a similar sense. How do we build a machine learning model that is aware of existing styles so it doesn't steal from an existing artist or existing art style and say that, hey, this is something that relates to the DNA of Picasso or something like that. So you want the model to be uh, scene aware so that it can produce content that goes beyond existing data and somehow so that it promotes creativity in AI to accelerate content creation. So in
Got it.
Imagine to See, we actively want the model to be aware of the unseen so that for perception purposes. Here we wanted to have a machines to be actively knowing about what it has seen and the plausible space of unseen so that it creates something that is new and it has some sort of deviation from or meaningful deviation from what it has seen during training, so it doesn't steal from the content. Same
Yeah.
thing for what is imagining field. For example, it's imagining field also from the language perspective. We wanted to broaden the perception or maybe deepen the perception of visual content so that the model can understand beyond what's literally in the image. So, for example, someone can say, hey, this is a picture of a beautiful city, a beautiful waterfront. I can imagine myself sitting by the water listening to the birds. This kind of description is not, he's not there. Maybe there might not be birds, right? But this visual content construct an emotional experience for a person who perceived this image to imagine himself have this experience happening in that place. So this is another sort of imagination. We can think about something similar for agents or driving.
So I want to drill down a little bit more on the feel part. So I'll tell you what I heard from you, and of course, in my own words, um, imagine to feel is about creating an immersive illusion that creates the room for the user of the model to experience an emotion that would not have experienced it otherwise.
Yes, yes. Uh, I think one of the things that inspired me, we wanted to build a human compatible AI, right? And in order to build a model that is compatible with human, we need to build, we want one aspect of this compatibility is to be compatible with human emotions. We want to AI to communicate with people. We want to understand what is the spectrum of emotional experiences that can be constructed in response to some visual stimuli. So that's the perspective that this part wants to bridge. So we want to decrease the gap between um, machines and human in the sense that machines need to understand how the emotional that we are need to understand that we are emotional beings. And right now we are just focusing on literal perception of what this word means, what this and so on. This is from mainly computer vision perspective.
Yes. So actually, I love this direction because it touches on something that is very close to my heart, which is mental health. Mental health is, of course, it involves, like, both diagnosis and addressing a number of mental conditions. and psychological conditions. And if I am experiencing a depression episode or something, which like who doesn't, um, when you are in a place, in a dark place, emotionally, or in a psychologically speaking, you want to find ways to intervene with this, right? Like this is an important, like it's a need actually. If you have a good therapist, if you have a good psychologist, they can help. They have methods that are well established and studied and researched. I imagine, following your lead, I imagine that in the future, if we have good enough models that create this illusion of a feeling, that might be, after a number of clinical studies, hopefully, I
Yeah.
imagine at some point in the future we can prescribe to people who are experiencing certain conditions, like a machine learning model to use in order to recover from a certain emotional state they are in, or a certain trauma. And of course, as we know, traumas don't just like heal like this. It takes a lot of iterations, but really the interventions like medicine or drugs that we take sometimes do accelerate this recovery. So I'm not, of course, assuming that this is going to work out of the box, and I really have to be careful here, because like safe use of AI is such an important matter to me, and I'm sure to a lot of the audience. So this definitely will require a number of verification steps and testing. But I'm really hopeful to see something like this become like in the market one day.
I also wish the same. To this point, we are actually working on a project in this particular problem. So, with a health entrepreneur he's the CEO of Mindco Health. His name is Emilio Golden Hirsch. So we have collected the data set of therapy sessions, more than 1,000 video, few hundred, 150 hours of therapy sessions, where we wanted to understand exactly, explore understanding this, how to make us the first step in a direction like this. So far, we managed to collect the data, separate the part where the therapist is speaking, the patient speaking, or something like that. And we are taking some initial steps to understand emotions of mainly the patient, and how does it dynamically change over time. If the person is feeling positive at some neutral, and then he started to feel happy, and then after some point he feels sad, what justifies the transition from one emotion to another during the series of interactions? And how can we at some point have a ChatGPT like technology that can listen to the conversation and maybe suggest some sort of interventions or a reason about a history of those all decisions that has been happening with that particular person, to make this conversation most helpful towards the goal that the therapist and the patients want to achieve to improve their experience and mental health. Yeah.
That is so exciting. I cannot wait to look at an early draft of this paper when you're ready for it.
Okay.
But I have a burning question. Did the patients acknowledge and agree to their videos being used for that research?
Most of the videos that we have used right now is based on publicly released YouTube videos that has, I think, indicated like license. We have been collaborating with Stanford, who are, I think, taking care of using this, taking care of the copyright part of this. Many of those videos actually are role playing, and we are trying to partner with other other places where we can get even more
Got it.
data. But
It would be great actually to see, in that publication, like the breakdown of like who is like real conversation, who's role played. I think safety of patients and like privacy of patients is a huge important thing for a lot of people who will be reading this work. But it sounds like what you're saying is the patients have already published those videos for one reason or another, even the ones who are not role playing. So we don't have to dig into this in further detail now. The last part that I feel like we haven't touched upon yet is the Imagine to Drive. And Imagine to Drive, it's kind of easy to imagine to drive because Teslas are out there. So why does this chapter needs to be written if we already have cars that attempt to do autonomous driving?
The current version of the book, I actually had some changes on that. I generalized it to acting. Imagine to act, so that it refers to any agents, not only cars is one part of the equation, but acting is something that is more important. How do we build? We want some one day to have robots, right, in our home, robots that helps us bring me the coffee, bring me the cup on the table, close the door, and make me a cup of coffee or something like that. So these kind of questions or requests that we might have from a robot are kind of endless, right? And most of the time, maybe those requests can be novel in novel environment and things like that. So we want to decompose this problem into the right path, so that maybe the whole task is novel and the robot needs to have a plan and imagine how to execute it. Um, yeah, but at the end of the day, it can be a novel task that hasn't been seen before, and that's where the imagination term is coming from. For self-driving cars, I still think that imagination is important, because we have systems that works quite well on San Francisco roads, or where the training is happening. But if we imagine to put these systems in elsewhere in Egypt or India or something like that, maybe the bar is really is really high.
I can
So
only imagine if like the thought that comes to mind right now is like in one of these highways in Egypt where it's popular, it's common for people to drive in the reverse direction. Like I'm sure that you've been in highways
okay.
where like you are in the highway, but there's a car driving in the wrong direction, and it might be a donkey, like a carrot. So it's like it's a very imaginative. Like I'd say, none of the models trained today for Tesla are ready for this. So I agree with you. I
Mm,
will kind of to clarify one thing, and we'll have to end this, part of
yeah.
the talk or the presentation, the podcast, which is imagine to act. It in my mind, the way I understood it from you is all about planning. You have like a task that requires multiple, maybe perception and creation tasks as
Mm.
subcomponents, and your job, the like what you're trying to have the model do, is have a plan for achieving this end goal that it will require a series of steps.
And the hope is to is that this kind of, how does the model like perform this kind of task, especially when the spectrum of possibilities, the space of possibilities is huge. So you have no chance to cover every combination or every composition or every scenario during training. So
Right.
how would the model learn the skill of decomposing a like a complex task into the small components, and come up with the right plan to execute it, or something like that?
Got it. So
Uh,
in the next episode, we're going to dive in the first part, imagine to see, and see how much further you go in the book. Maybe we can have another episode about each part separately.
it has been a pleasure chatting with you, Walid, for this, and looking forward to engage more with you and your routine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.